actually looked for and mentioned in the warrant and then able to be seized in that warrant.
And then yet, Peter, came at a time when Paul Manafort was voluntarily, under threat of subpoena, turning over documents to the Senate. So is this perhaps a signal from Bob Mueller that, look, we're going to take a slightly different tact here?
Yeah, that's absolutely what he's saying, because the Senate Intelligence Committee met with him, and literally the next morning they sort of said, with this search warrant, we don't trust you to keep some of the documents. So he either told them that he had certain documents, or his conversations were different than other people's about what documents he may have had. It's possible Trump Jr. said one of the Russian lawyers gave him documents, and he said, I don't have those documents, and then they boomed the doors. This was, to point out, to Robert's point, this was a no-knock warrant. That's fairly unusual, where they don't knock on the door, and they came in armed and raided this place.
Well, Peter, some of the documents that were retrieved reportedly included Manafort's notes from that meeting with Donald Trump Jr. and the Russian lawyer. Now, if those notes prove or indicate that the meeting was innocuous, how does that stand in terms of proof? Is that sufficient proof, or is that a personal record of what happened and not necessarily going to hold up?
It's possible they're innocuous, and then there would be no crime. But given that there was a search warrant, my guess is it's possible that one of the Russian lawyers turned over some documents on the dirt.
But if his own personal notes indicate nothing happened here, is that enough, or is that a subjective account that doesn't hold water?
It would be possible, depending on what the other notes say. It may be that he didn't write down certain stuff. If it's completely innocuous, then the grand jury will decide that, and that's the reason they have the grand jury.
Well, and Robert, speaking of the grand jury, I mean, we had the news, of course, a couple of days ago that Mueller has impaneled 2 grand juries, one in Virginia and one in Washington. But given what you were saying about what's needed for this kind of warrant to go and do essentially a raid, is it possible that perhaps the special counsel and his team of FBI agents who have been detailed to him are a bit farther along in this investigation than a lot of us may realize?
Well, clearly, yes. And when Director Mueller first took over, I made some public statements that I hope we don't hear from them for a while. I hope there's no leaks. I hope they're able to conduct their business in the privacy that they're entitled to and can be effective in. And I expected this to move along at this kind of pace. It's probably a surprise to a lot of people, but this investigation's been going on a while. And these are very good, experienced agents. And it doesn't surprise me at all that a grand jury has been impaneled and that they're probably hearing testimony and getting to look at some of the evidence that's been gathered.
Pete, some Manafort allies say that Mueller could be building a case against Manafort that's not related to the 2016 election. That's an easier case to build, with the idea of getting Manafort to give up some information on President Trump in exchange, cut some kind of a deal. What do you think of that?
I think that's exactly right. When you look at the people in the meeting, you have a son-in-law in Trump Jr., and then you have a bunch of Russian or Russian-American lobbyists. What I would see when I was a prosecutor, the one weak link is Manafort, who has previously there's been discussions they worked with Ukraine that there was potential money laundering of $750,000. Essentially what's going on in this game is, I had an old professor who once said to students who said, we broke our tire. He's brought him in for the exam on the following day, and they had one question on the exam, and it was, which tire was it? That's the game that's being played right now with all these different people. Different people are saying different things, and they're trying to find out what's missing.
And Robert, is it unusual for a special counsel or his team of FBI agents and prosecutors to, in the course of an investigation, if they uncover crimes such as money laundering, it's not unusual for them to chase down that lead, is it?
No, not at all. But, the money laundering aspect may not be a sidelight to this thing. If you look at the team especially the team of prosecutors that Director Mueller put together, I mean, this is an all-star prosecutorial team of experts in money laundering, big corporate law. You have the Enron lawyers. You have people and prosecutors that are very good at following a money trail. And that's, when you look at the makeup of the prosecution team, it kind of tells you a little bit about what direction Director Mueller felt this thing was going to go.
All right. Robert Chacon, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Peter Culp, thanks for joining us here in studio.